Hey Vibhu, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Okay, should we get started?
Yeah.
Already. So, today we will look at how to analyze a business, and the business that we have chosen is Apple, and this is what you wanted to study. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm going to put it in the presentation mode, and we'll go back and forth. Cool. So the way in which I will go through this session today, we will look at Apple through four lenses or four different filters. One, we will look at the business. Two, we will look at why is this business durable, in the sense what is so special or unique about that business that makes it earn returns much higher than most other companies. So the third one we will look at are the risks that are inherent with this business or with Apple. And the last part is valuation. In the sense, if we go and invest in Apple or buy Apple shares, what returns can we get over the next 5 years? So we will look at it through these four lenses, and that's how this presentation will be done today. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, as I told you, the best way to start learning about a company is by start with their 10K report. So, every public company in the US, they have to file a report which is called as 10-K or 10K with the regulator called as the Securities and Exchange Commission, or they are in short, they are called as SEC. Have you heard about SEC?
Yeah.
Cool. So basically, you would have to go open Apple's latest 10K report and start looking at it. And when you start, usually 10K reports range from 100 pages to maybe 150 pages. And your job is not to read from page 1 to page 150 because it won't make any sense. So you would have to selectively read it. You would have to ask a bunch of questions and then you try to find answers from those questions. So what is present in 10K report is a general description about the business, their financial situations. Basically, they'll share their income statement, in the sense how much revenue did the company generate, how much profit or loss did the company make, their cash flow statement, in the sense does the business earn cash or generate cash, or did it burn cash. Then they will show you the balance sheet. How much does the company own and how much does it owe? So that's what you would find in 10K, and a bunch of notes. For example, it would give you more information about what are the property, plant and equipment that they have, etc., etc. So you get a lot of detailed breakdown about it. So that's what you would find in the 10K report. So with that introduction, I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is the first filter. As I told you, is the business filter. So what Apple, or pretty much any smartphone or any Apple phone or an iPhone or an Android phone, did is they took a bunch of things that we were using separately. For example, the guy in the picture, he has a tape recorder, he has a video recorder, and he has a bunch of items. It all got collapsed and then put it inside our pocket in the form of an iPhone, or maybe in the form of an Android phone, since Apple is the one which came out with the smartphone first, called as iPhone. So I'm going to say Apple did it. A bunch of things, 50 things or 500 things, all bundled into one smartphone that fit into our pocket. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's look at the business. See, there is something called as, do you know what a framework is?
It's just like a model to like simplify a complex idea, right? To like easily understand,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah. So when we study a business, there are many frameworks through which we can look at a business. And as you said, it helps us to simplify things. We can, usually framework is nothing but uh, um, it's a prepackaged set of questions which helps us to navigate a complex things like analyzing a business, makes it much, much simpler. So the framework that we will use is called as a business model canvas. So basically what it does is it breaks down analyzing a business or looking at a business into 8 broad categories: value prop, customer. I mean, I've just broken it down, those 8 into 3, color coded as green, yellow, and blue. And you're the one who did this work. So let's start with the first group, which is called as value prop. What does this tell you? And explain me what did you write here?
I mean, value proposition, I think it is it's like the value Apple will provide to its like users and consumers.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they give like iPhones, Apple Watches, and all of their hardwares.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, you could get apps from the App Store, which
Mm-hmm.
is another value proposition they have.
Mm-hmm.
And their Apple is known for like high quality products, which is their brand.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get an Apple product, you will also get software that is integrated, deeply integrated to
Mm-hmm.
to each other, so you could like combine different products together. For example, I get my text messages on my Apple Watch, so I don't have to check my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just they're all like connected, and that's what you get from Apple that they do better than other companies.
Got it. So that's the value proposition. Then let's jump to customer segments. Explain me what this is.
Oh, that's just who their customers are. And as we know, Apple is a global brand, and
Mm-hmm.
they have over 1 billion customers around the world.
Got it. And what channels does Apple use to sell their products to their customers? In a sense, how does a customer get Apple's products? That's what the channel section is.
Well, 34% is from first party, which is Apple's like own stores, physical stores, and through their own website.
Mm-hmm.
But most of their sales comes through like third party and their partners, such as retail stores such as Walmart, maybe online stores like Amazon, and maybe like wholesale places like Costco.
Got it. And have you seen an Apple phone in Costco?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's been a while since I've been there, but they sell phones for sure, and I think they sell iPhones.
Got it.
Yeah,
Makes
they do.
sense.
They sell Apple products. Yeah, I remember seeing in the booklet.
Makes sense. No, yeah, you're right. I think they have a separate section for Apple. But yeah, that's so basically it's the interaction point is through their own channels and through indirect distribution channels like the ones that you said. Okay, let's go to customer relationships. What does that mean, and how does Apple does it?
Well, I mean, customer relationship, I think is like how the consumer interacts with the product, right? I'm not sure if I'm remembering this one correctly. Is
Yeah, you're
that
right. Yeah, you're right.
okay? So, like we said over there, they could get software updates to their applications through the App Store.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's the key one. I mean, other things they could do on their own with they could download apps too. So that's like a few ways they can interact with the App Store.
Got it. Yeah, totally. Yeah, basically, it's most of them is self-served. How many times have you spoken to Apple's customer support team or customer service team?
None.
Yeah, because it's all self-served. It's, they push software automatically. In the sense, I don't even remember when I had to remember to install a software because I get a notification.
Oh yeah, auto
Yeah.
update.
Yeah, it's auto update. So they simplified it massively. The reason they have to do that is you can't have, if you have to support 1 billion plus people using their products, the only way to do that, an efficient way to do that is through automate as much as you can, self-serve it. That's what self-service here is.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So let's look at the leftmost, the blue section now, key resources, key activities, and key partners. So let's start with key activities. What does Apple do? That's what key activities all
Oh
about.
yeah, I mean, if you look like I think what they used to have it in the back of their phones is like designed by Apple in California, made in China. So that implies that Apple like designs the phone, like how the phone is made and all. They don't worry about building it. So yeah, they do the design aspect. They make the iOS, Mac OS, Watch OS, all of that. And they also build the Apple brand. For example, they make Apple a quality brand. Like Apple, all Apple products are well made, expensive in a way, and innovative.
Innovate. Okay. And then what do they need to make what they are making, which is the key resources.
Yeah, key resources. So they need employees to build software such as maps and operating systems. They have intellectual properties that they buy, which would help them make like, for example, shows for their Apple TV service. And the brand is also a key resource for them, because that's the reason why people buy Apple products over the competitors.
Who are their competitors?
In the phone market, you have Samsung, you have the Google Pixel, OnePlus.
Got it.
Pretty much Android phones.
Makes sense. And then talk about who do they partner with to deliver the value that they're delivering.
Yeah, so they need the supplies to make the phone. So they partner with companies such as Foxconn and Vistron, which provide them the supplies. And they also partner with carriers such as AT&T and Verizon to distribute their phones. App developers are a key part of the Apple ecosystem, because they're the ones who fill up the app stores with apps that people use. And the distribution partners such as Amazon and Walmart that also help distribute phones.
Makes sense. Yeah. So pretty much, the activities they do, the resources they need, and then the partnership that they have to do. So that describes your blue section. Now let's quickly talk about the bottom portion, which is the revenue streams and their cost structure. Let's focus on the revenue streams.
Yeah, so they make most of their revenue from products and accessories such as iPhones, chargers, AirPods, all of those.
Yeah.
And 20% of their revenue comes from services, which I think includes like Apple TV, Apple Music, all of those. And I think that section is like growing more and more.
Yeah.
And they also make revenue from advertising and royalty fees for when you buy something from the Apple Store. They get 30% off the cut.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And what about the cost structure?
So that's what Apple spends their money on. So the cost of sales is like how much money they have to like use to make the item that they sell.
Yeah.
R&D is a big part for Apple because they're always trying to innovate and something new. And selling, general, and administrative. Is there an extra explanation for that, or?
Yeah, so these are expenses that they would incur. For example, the salary that they pay.
Oh, salaries, all of those. Okay.
Yeah, that will go, and then the HR operations will go there, and anything related to brand building, they have to spend money on marketing, etc., etc.
Oh, marketing is part of that. Okay, okay.
They'll all go into that bucket. Anything that's not directly associated with the cost of the products that they are making, like phones, or that doesn't go into research and development, like the salaries they pay for product managers, designers, and engineers. Everything else is bucketed under selling, general, and administration. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly open up the 10K report of Apple 2020. And I mean, this is a software that I pay. I mean, this is I pay for it every month or every year because it helps me to browse it much quickly, and I can search for it much quickly. So there is a section, every 10K report, they will break down their revenue so that you can actually look at what makes up the revenue. So in case of Apple, to 2020, they made roughly $275 billion. Services makes up, as you said, 20%, 53 billion. Rough math will be like 20-ish%, right?
Yeah.
The rest of it is all hardware, and iPhone is definitely a big chunk at the top. Right? So that's one piece that you can look at. And the other piece you can look at is America and Europe and China. They form a big piece. America is huge, followed by Europe, followed by China. Rest of Japan and Asia Pacific is not as big as it should be.
Yeah, isn't Japan a huge like tech hub?
Yeah, but again, right, Japan doesn't have that many people. So maybe, right, this, I don't know what the share of iPhone and Android phones in Japan. But in Asia, you have, I mean, the whole of India is like close to 1.4 billion people. And then you have so many other countries that is not, I mean, that's not China and Asia. So basically what it tells you is there's a lot of room for Apple to grow is one way to look at it, but another way to argue is, look, these markets are, it's a mass market. It's proliferated with cheaper Android phones. Maybe it's hard for Apple to get a share there. So that's what you can derive from this.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to the Japan thing, something I just found online is Apple has a 42.4% market share in Japan.
Makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, they could do better there too.
Yeah, 42 is decent actually. If you come here, I'll show you future slides. And one other thing to note, where some companies, they break down their margins, gross margins by product category. For example, they make 31.5% from hardware sales. What do I mean by that is, if I sell hardware for $100, Apple makes $31.50 before any other expenses. Okay, that is the cost of making the product, is going to be minus that. They are making 31.5% or $31.50. And services they are making, for every $100 of sale, they are making 66% or $66.
Yeah.
Right. So service is a highly profitable business segment compared to products, hardware. But believe me, this is massive compared to other hardware players that are out there. So we will look at it all as we move along. Cool. So 10K gives you this breakdown, nice little breakdown. And also, if you just connect it back, you said cost of sales, R&D, and selling, general and administrative. So you can look at the split here. Gross margin is after cost of sales, gross profit is. Then your operating profit, you can look at R&D, they spend 7% of sales. SG&A, they spend 7% of sales. So put together these two items, they spend 14% of sales. Okay, so these are ballparkish numbers. These are numbers where you don't want to memorize, but you get a feel for what does the cost structure of this company or any company look like by looking at the breakdown in their 10K. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Now the next question to ask us is Apple a good business? How do you find that out? What question or what should you look at to say that it's a good business?
Well, I mean, are they making a profit? That's an important thing for a business. They need to make money.
Yep.
And yeah, that's a key one. There's probably a lot of like smaller questions you'd have to ask.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. So the question, as you said, how much money is Apple putting into the business? How much profit is it making? Is it high or is it low? That's the question that we are going to answer. And a good business has one more important characteristic, which is, if a business can grow and continue to expand its dominance without spending a lot of capital, then that's a phenomenal business to have. What do I mean by that? Is, say, if I put $100, okay, and I make $30 in profit or $25 in profit, so I'm making 25% returns on my capital. Okay, that's pretty good, and we'll look at why it is good. Now let's take next year that $25 becomes $30, which means I grew by 20%, and I don't need to put in much more capital. Then that to me is a great business, where it's a phenomenal business to have, where it can grow without the owners or the shareholders committing more and more capital into the business.
So it's like kind of self-sustaining.
It is self-sustaining, and it can grow without a lot of capital. It can spit out a lot of cash to shareholders. They can do whatever they want with the cash, and still the business will continue to grow and it will get stronger. That's the sign of a great business to have. Okay. So let's look at the numbers. So there are 5 things that I'm looking at over the last 5 years for Apple. And I'm comparing Apple with S&P 500. I mean 500 minus all the financial stocks. So which means I'm excluding banks like Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, or anything to do with lending businesses is removed from this 500 companies, so that it's an apples to apples comparison. All right. Now the return, ROCE, stands for return on capital employed. How much capital does the business take in, and how much does it generate? If you look at it, how much on average Apple is generating, if you eyeball it?
About 30%.
And how much the rest of them, the non-financial 500? 11. Now Apple is how many times bigger than the rest of the company, the index?
About 3 times.
Yeah, is that good or bad?
Oh yeah, that's good.
It's huge, right?
Yeah.
Now, tell me how much is their gross margin?
It's about 38%.
But the other companies are making 44%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is something wrong with Apple? You can't say yes until you look at operating margin. Now, how much Apple's operating margin is?
About 30%.
How much is for the average, I mean the index?
It's 12%.
So Apple is doing really, really well there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So one question you can ask me is like, how come gross margins are lower, but operating margin ended up still being higher? So there is a concept called as operating leverage, or that you would find in software companies. Say, for example, if you have 100 engineers, okay, building a product, let's take they generate $100, okay, as
Mm-hmm.
sales. Now, for generating $1,000, they don't need 1,000 engineers. You might need another 20 engineers or 25 engineers,
Oh yeah.
because a software can scale infinitely, or it can scale at a much higher rate than the cost that it would take to scale it. So that's what you find in companies like Apple, and you would find similar characteristics in Google, Facebook, and other tech companies, where my operating profits, which is your R&D and whatnot, it won't grow exponentially, or it won't grow at the same rate compared to the top line or my revenue. So that's a huge advantage, or a good sign for a strong business.
Mm-hmm.
And cash conversion is very simple. How much of the dollar in profit that the Apple is bringing in is getting converted to cash? So Apple is converting more than a dollar of profit that it is bringing in. I mean, there's an accounting difference between a profit and a cash. We don't need to get into this in this session, but having a higher cash conversion definitely tells you that, oh, this company can turn in more of its profits into cash, compared to the index, which is at 94%, and Apple has been constantly growing. It is up to 110%. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Apple doesn't have a lot of debt. So what interest coverage is, see, whenever you have debt, you need to pay interest on that, correct?
Yeah.
Put that interest in the denominator, the interest you are going to pay out in the denominator, and put the profits before you pay out interest and taxes in the numerator. So let's
Okay.
take,
Yeah.
yeah. So basically it is like how many times I can cover the interest.
Oh, so bigger numbers better.
Bigger is better, and Apple need not worry about it at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So can we answer or say that Apple is a good business?
I mean, we can see they're making the money.
Mm-hmm.
They can convert it to cash, and they could easily pay off their debt. So far, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you don't know whether they can pay off debt, but you know that they can cover their interest or
Oh,
service their
cover.
interest.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the right word.
Yeah, that's the right word. But yeah. Okay. Now, looking at a 10K report and answering, is this a good business, is the step one of the equation. But what we need to do is, you can't judge a company by looking at 1 year's of financials, or even 3 or 4 years of financials. You need to kind of look at it over a period of time. So basically, it's like watching a movie versus looking at a still photograph. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was, I just pretty much, starting 2013 to 20, I took one snapshot. Then we'll look at more snapshots. What do you see from the snapshot? Just, 3 things that stands out.
Well, obviously, their net sales has been growing
Okay.
from 13 to 20,
Mm-hmm.
and their services has also been growing. It's been
Yeah.
getting bigger and bigger. And something that's been kind of stagnant since 2015
Mm-hmm.
is their iPhone net sales.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's it. And again, by the way, this is not 20 or 30. This is 200 billion, right? 200 billion,
Oh, right,
200
yeah.
billion. And then it's roughly at around 275 billion. And then one more thing to notice is wearable segment, the one green in color.
Mm-hmm.
That's been growing faster. And there's one thing that I counted in 2013 where iPod is also clubbed in wearables, which is not right. So if you remove that, wearables would have been much tinier in 2013 compared to where it is. I mean, wearables, homes and accessories, it would have been much, much, much tiny in 2013 compared to where it is right now.
I mean, what section would you put iPod in?
iPod should be a standalone thing. So I didn't do it because I mean, does Apple even sell iPods these days?
I think they still do.
Yeah, so but it'll be time. I mean, they don't even break it down. So I don't know where they bundle it, if they do.
Mm-hmm.
At least today. I mean, back then they broke it out separately. Okay, so those are the big things that stand out. And then we will look at why, what, etc. as we move along. Now,
Alright.
what I want to do is I want to continue looking at Apple over a period of time, a long period of time, and I'll explain you why I'm doing what I'm doing. So this is Apple on September 1997 when Steve Jobs came into Apple again. Remember, he was ousted and then he was brought back in, and Apple was 2 months from bankruptcy on September 1997. So basically, right, what do you see from this chart?
Their net sales started to drop from 95. Their income went to the negatives around mid 95, and their debt was increasing.
Yeah, so basically Apple has been burning money and sales declining, and they were irrelevant as far as PC market was concerned. Windows, Microsoft and Intel, they had, I mean, pretty much it's a way they took they took the market share. Apple had less than 3% market share. So Apple was not relevant and losing sales as a tech business. Pretty much the writing was on the wall. That was the situation when Steve Jobs came in. And in fact, when he came in, Apple lost 70% of its market cap. So Apple was selling at $1.9 billion. That's the market cap of Apple, or say close to 2 billion.
Wait, they lost 70% the day he was back or
No,
something?
no. When he came back, I think it went up. But in the last, that's a good question. So from 93 to 97, Apple lost 70% of its market cap.
Oh, like that. Okay.
So yeah, so if it was selling for, let's take, what was it I said? So it was a say $8 billion company. It was selling at say $2 billion, right? So that's the math. And not only that, their share was less than 3% of the overall PC market. So the moment he came in, one of the few things that he did was he convinced Microsoft to inject in $150 million into Apple in exchange for some portion of equity for Apple. And Microsoft did that. Again, it's not out of generosity. I think Microsoft did that. Microsoft was fighting a different battle with the Department of Justice, where they would look even badder if Apple had become bankrupt. So in order to look good in the eyes of the regulators, they injected in $150 million. So that helped them to kind of be a good guy, or look like a good guy. So it gave him some cash, which was good. And then what Jobs did was pretty phenomenal. Do you know who the guys, the two guys in the picture are?
I know one of them is Tim Cook.
Yeah, the
The
other
other
guy
guy, not so sure.
is Jonathan Ive, the designer behind Apple. So he's the think about him like the god of design. So he brought Tim Cook to streamline Apple's operations and supply chain, and he brought Jonathan Ive, an industrial designer, to come up with design a kick-ass product, which is what you see on the screen on the left-hand side. It's iMac. iMac is a revolutionary product that came out where, remember those days, computers are pretty much in black and white, and you would get it from, say, Dell or Compaq. I mean, there's nothing colorful. There's no life in it. Every computer looked the same. So he came up with this colored and beautiful looking computer, and this product become an instant hit. So from 1997 to 2000, since Steve Jobs came in, he pretty much turned around. I mean, turned around in the sense, say from a 7 billion, I mean, remember from 7, it went to 5.9 to 6. Revenues are up again, close to $8 billion, which is a good sign. from a $1 billion loss-making company, he turned around Apple as a profit-making company. Debt came down from, say, close to $1 billion to 300 million. Equity went up as well. So overall, the company can stand on its feet compared to a company that's going to die within 2 months. Steve Jobs turned around the company, and during this time, Apple stock doubled in value. Say from 2 billion, it went up to 4 billion. Remember, this is during the dot-com crash, and that's a huge feat to accomplish. And in the peak, it was much, much higher. So Jobs turned around the company. At least they are surviving, standing there. At that point in time, there was an interview of Steve Jobs that was taken in 98, when one of the professors asked them, now what? Looks like you're trying to turn around, but still Microsoft and Intel, they are dominating, and that dominance is going to continue. What are you going to do now? What's your strategy? So Steve Jobs smiled and said, I'm going to wait for the next big thing. The reason I'm saying, or I'm giving you this history, in every industry, especially in tech industry, every 10 to 15 years, a wave comes in. When I say a wave, a new paradigm shift in technology comes in. For example, it was mainframes long, long ago in the 70s. Then personal computers came in. Then the whole internet happened, search happened, then social networking happened, and the mobile happened. Now cloud is an ongoing theme. So a new wave comes in, and you will find some strong players emerging from nowhere. And some of the yesterday's strong players become weaker players. Now, Apple, it completely missed the PC wave. Clearly, Microsoft is the leader. And it did not capitalize on the internet wave yet. So Jobs is saying, I'm waiting for the next big thing. So this is the reason why I'm going through it, because you got to catch the wave. If not, it's going to be a problem, especially in the tech industry. Questions?
None so far. So is the next wave the iPhone or iPod?
No, yeah. Next wave is iPod.
iPod, right?
So Apple caught the consumer technology wave. And if you look at this story as well, it's serendipity. So one of the Apple executives, he goes to Japan, a regular visit to Toshiba. And Toshiba shows this guy a small hard drive, very small hard drive. I think it's 1.8 inches or 2 inches, inches in length. It's a very small hard drive, and it can store, I don't remember how many gigs was that hard drive. Was it 5 gigs? I'm just searching my 1 second. That hard drive was it 5 gigs? Okay. And
5
Toshiba
gigs.
did 5 gig.
That
Toshiba,
sounds like a lot. I mean, back then it probably was.
yeah, it was a lot
Yeah.
higher. I used to pay back in India, I used to pay, I mean, 100 or 200 rupees. You can do the math, a dollar or two, right? In those times, $2 for getting maybe an MB in storage. This was
Wait.
back, yeah, this was back in 95, 96, by the way. It's not very
Oh,
far.
wow.
Yeah. So those were the times.
$2 an MP.
Yeah. So those were the times. Hold on. I think I'm hearing some noise. 1 second.
I heard a beep.
Yeah. Okay. Looks good. So this exec, he instantly got an idea. He connected that storage to storing 1,000 songs. And at that point, the idea was this: what if Apple can make a device, a cool looking device, and they know that they can do it with their experience of iMac, where consumers can take 1,000 songs with them and make the design as elegant as possible and the experience as frictionless as possible. And imagine what happened. iPod came out, right? And as they say, rest is history. So from 2003 to 2007, if you look at it, iPod generated at least, I would say, 33% of sales. And they were doing really, really well. And iPod is a revolutionary device. I used to have one as well. And what Apple did and Steve Jobs did was, they did not stop with, they did not milk their iPod. they continued to revolutionize it. They came up with iPod mini, then they came up with iPod nano, then they innovated on hardware storage. From a hard drive, they moved into flash storage. They continued innovating and they disrupted their own product. The idea behind it, and especially in tech, if you don't disrupt, somebody else will disrupt you. So you want to be at the forefront, and Apple and Steve Jobs, they continue doing it. Okay. Now, during this time, Apple's market cap from 2003 to 7 went up from 4 billion-ish to 153 billion. It went up by 36x in 7 years. Right? I mean, $1 is $36. That's the way to think about it. Okay. Now, what happened next? Then iPhone came.
Right.
And I won't get into the details of iPhone. You can read about it. So I've stopped at 2011. Do you know why?
Why?
That's when Steve Jobs died.
Yeah. I just realized right after saying why.
Yeah. And when Steve Jobs died, remember, he joined the company in 97. I rejoined the company in 97. So he increased sales by 15x during his second tenure, from 7 billion to 108 billion. He turned around a loss-making company to generate $26 billion in profits. Market cap went up from 2 billion to 327 billion. That's 164x up in 11 years. Sorry, 97 in 14 years. That's the kind of impact that he had brought into the company. And Apple pretty much figured out a way to, please millions, if not billions of consumers, and do it in a way and be profitable. And that's what their experience from iMac to iPod to iPhone. Along with iPhone, they also launched iPad during that time. Okay. And then with this, Steve Jobs moves on, and then Tim Cook becomes the CEO. Okay. Now, I found this quote. I think one presentation that you should watch if you want to know how to present something. Steve Jobs' iPhone presentation, I would say, is brilliant, where he says people who are really serious about software should make their own hardware. Now, if you look at smartphones, there are two major players. One is iPhone, another one is Android. And Apple is the only company. It's a fully vertically integrated company. What do I mean by that? Is they design their hardware, they make their hardware, in the sense contract manufacture it, and they make their own software. Their software can be adopted to make the hardware as frictionless as possible, and vice versa. Hardware can also be adopted, so they control it to the nth possible level. And that pleases, and that makes customers super delighted and happy.
Wait, what about the Google Pixel? Because Android is Google, right?
Yes, they are. But how many phones have they sold?
Yeah, probably not as much as iPhone.
Yeah, I think, if there's one company that is enormously successful, being a vertically integrated company, I think Apple definitely stands up at the top.
Yeah.
I think Tesla is doing something similar with both owning the software and the hardware with cars. So that's another interesting company to look at as well. All right. Cool. Moving along. Now, remember, right? You said you in 12th grade in your business class, you learned if a company is making a lot of money, capitalism guarantees that other entrepreneurs, they're not going to sit quietly. Right?
Right.
They are going to come in and they are going to figure out a way to earn that excess returns. Now, there should be something in the company that protects, not just protects, but it becomes stronger and stronger over a period of time so that it can continue to earn those high returns on capital. Now, those characteristics, Buffett calls them as moat. Or Porter, there's another person by the name Michael Porter, he calls them as a durable competitive advantage. So there should be something inherent with the company. Those qualities should make the company to protect its return on capital and continue to grow stronger and stronger. So that's what moat is all about. And we'll look at what characteristics Apple have that makes them earn these high returns. And more importantly, that will make them to earn continue to earn high returns. It's not the high returns yesterday. We are talking about the high returns going forward from now. Make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So Buffett's moat comes from, he says there's a castle. Think about a castle as a business. Say Apple is this castle. Now there are invaders or competitors who wants to come and destroy this castle or high profits. Now, if you look at the waters over here, this is going to prevent them from entering it easily. And then he says, throw some crocodiles in it so that you make life much harder for anyone to come in and take away that excess profit from you. And that's what he means by this quote. The most important thing for me is to figure out how big a moat is. And then a big castle with a big moat with piranhas and crocodiles. Okay. Now, what I did was to kind of distill it down, focus on one product, one primary product of Apple, which is iPhone, and then try to see what characteristics make Apple durable, right? So the first one is, you can look at, there are a billion iPhones that are active today, billion.
Right.
And to that iPhone, you can connect a watch. For example, you have both an iPhone and you have a watch. And you can also have an AirPods where I can listen to things without having a wire, where, it's wireless and I can enjoy the music, or I can enjoy podcasts, whatnot. So Apple has sold, I believe, around 100 million watches so far, and 200 million AirPods. And the beauty with Apple is they make, even though these are three different hardware or devices, they make it interoperate seamlessly. Like the example that you said, the notification that you got on the smartwatch, you don't need a phone. You can keep the phone in silent and keep it elsewhere, and that's what you're trying to do.
Right.
Similarly, the experience on AirPods is that. Now, see, remember, this phone is $1,000, right? It's an expensive phone for most people, depending on which country you're from. Now, if all I have is a phone and a watch and an AirPods, it won't be useful at all. What I need is, I need a lot of apps. Basically, I need a bunch of interesting software that will make my hardware useful. And not only that, if I have million plus free apps that I can put it on my phone, all of a sudden my $1,000 will look much cheaper. Remember, I can go to App Store, which is where developers write their own apps and then they push it, where I can install most of them that I want to for free. Okay. Now, on the other side of the ecosystem, there are more than 2 million apps that are available on App Store. Okay.
Right.
And there are 20 million iPhone developers. They are free to develop whatever apps or creative things that they have in mind. They can do that and push it to App Store. Okay. Now, the first effect that you're going to find is called as network effects. What do I mean by that is, why would an iOS developer take all his time and energy to create an app and push it to App Store? What is in it for them?
Money, right?
Yeah, money. But what do you need for you to make money?
You need a developer kit. You need to know how to make the apps, right?
Yeah, you need people to install those apps.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And you need
a billion.
Base. Yeah, you need an install base. You have a billion of them. Similarly, if you are making a decision to buy a phone, right? Of course, I'll talk about Android as well as we move along. Would you buy a phone with apps, which an app store, or with a store with a million apps, or would you buy a phone with a store of, say, 5 apps?
A million apps, because you have more choices.
So basically, users go to a platform where there are more apps, and app developers goes to a platform where there are more users. Okay.
Right.
One more developer is going to benefit all the users on this side, and one more user will benefit all the developers on this side. So this is what a network effect is. The value of a product or a service goes up to other users if one extra user joins a network. Okay. So that's the first thing. And this is massive if you think about it. Now, here's the most important thing that one should look at. There's something called as a jobs to be done. What problems does an iPhone solve for an user? That's the most important question that one should ask. Okay. Now let's talk about you. What do you use your iPhone for? Just walk me through the things that you do with your phone every day. Just maybe 3 or 4 things you do.
I listen to music.
Mm-hmm.
I browse the internet.
Okay.
And does it include iPhone or watches too?
Yeah. All of them.
Oh, and I use my watch for I text people.
You text people. Okay. So you stay connected, you stay informed, and then do you use it to work out?
Yeah.
Okay. So you stay fit. What else? Let me add a few more. I use Apple Pay to pay wherever I go now. These days, I do Apple Pay. Remember, we did use Apple TV for something. What was that?
Ted Lasso.
Yeah, we watched Ted Lasso, and I use Apple Podcast to listen to podcasts, and Apple Maps for driving. And these are what Apple owns. And there are countless other things that I have on my phone. So pretty much right from the day I wake up to that time I go to bed, where I keep an alarm on my iPhone, Apple's iPhone is helping me to get things done, get my job done. Okay. Now, what happens when you, so maybe another question I will ask. So I asked you to consider buying a Mac laptop versus a Windows laptop. You chose Windows laptop.
Yeah.
What was maybe 1 or 2 reasons that made you to stick with Windows laptop?
Well, I use a Windows computer right now, so I'm used to it, right?
Exactly. Okay. I think that's what I was looking for. You got used to it. Okay. So Apple, because of the way in which you interact with your phone, it becomes a part of you. Your every cell in your brain is rewired. It gets so accustomed to the phone. The psychological cost, I mean, forget about the cost of, oh, my music might not go there. I have so much of data with Apple Fitness that won't go to another. I mean, if I move to Android, forget about all of that. They all matter. But the psychological barrier that one has to overcome to move to another platform, the only other big platform that is out there is Android, is massive, massive. So the switching cost is another advantage that Apple has. Okay. Now, I'll give you one other example. Back in 2008, I joined LinkedIn. So back then, the only operating system that I worked on was Windows. Done. I never worked on a Mac operating system, but LinkedIn was a Mac shop. They gave me a Mac desktop and a Mac laptop. I hated it for the first 2 weeks because I was searching for a start button. The start button was not there. All my shortcuts are gone. I was like cringing, whatnot for a couple of weeks before I got used to it. Now, unless there is a forcing function, the psychological barrier to move to a competitor or maybe another competitive platform is way high. So Apple has enormous switching cost. Okay. See, Apple helps me get things done in a delightful way, which increases my switching cost. And also, I'll talk about maybe 1 or 2 things about Apple Pay, which is very important. So I never when it comes to financial stuff, I don't put it on my phone. So I resisted even putting my credit card information. I never used Apple Pay. You knew it, right? I used to hand out my physical card. Until COVID, I said I'm going to give it a try. The experience was so frictionless and delightful. I'm not going back from Apple Pay. So what Apple Pay did was, the onboarding experience, the way in which I scanned my credit card, they made it seamless one. Now, this Apple Pay, it would not just work on my phone, but it'll also work on my Mac laptop, right? The way in which they unlock it is they unlock it using Touch ID. Okay. And not only that, I subscribed for an app called as Mind, for a meditation app, Calm meditation app last year. I don't need to provide them with my credit card information. Oh, I had my credit card with Apple Pay, boom, auto magic. It just happened. Another layer of friction reduction. Okay. Now, and not only that, if you go to subways in New York, the turnstile that we all have, you would have to swipe and go, and you can just show your Apple. When you just walk with your phone on hand, boom, it senses, and then you can get it. And what they did was, remember, any marketplace where there are 2 or more sites, it's not enough if you have millions of people on one side. It's not enough if we have iPhone users on one side. You need merchants on the other side. What Apple did a phenomenal jobs. They have onboarded millions of merchants onto Apple Pay. I have not found a shop that said maybe one or two in some Delhi stores here and there. But for the most part, I have seen people or merchants accepting Apple Pay. So that's the level of effort that they put in to delight users, right? And what Apple gets you is the brand. Aha. Do you have a good feeling when you think of an Apple brand or Apple?
Yeah.
And I'm sure millions of people have that too. So anything, right? See, there's an objective thing. I use my phone to get things done. That's the objective part. But anything beyond the objective part, I get that aha moment. Every time I interact with Apple Pay, they make me happy. It's frictionless. Every time I look at my phone, it auto unlocks using Face ID. That's another way to delight. So that delighting moment over a long period of times on countless interactions, you have a strong affinity with Apple, and that gives it a huge advantage, which is the brand advantage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is scale economies. And I'll talk a little bit more in the next few slides as well. Scale economies is nothing. When you have, Apple sells close to $200 million, 200 million phones every year, close to, okay?
Mm-hmm.
When you sell so much, you have a huge advantage with your supplier, okay? So you can, they would give you a favorable terms compared to any other person, maybe a guy who is making say 10 million phones or 5 million phones. So my cost per unit or per phone will be much, much lower if I'm Apple. So because I can sell more, I get scale economies Apple gets scale economies as well. But I'm going to talk about in the next few slides where it's not very unique to Apple as well. It's also there for other smartphone makers, and I'll talk about it in the next slides. Any questions in this?
No.
And one other thing, remember on the left-hand side, Apple has 700 million paid subscriptions on its platform. Think about it for a minute. Do you know how many subscribers are there on Netflix?
I think a lot. It's in the million, like hundreds of millions, right?
It should be 200-ish, I guess.
All right.
That's my guess. Apple, Disney Plus should have 100 plus. Apple has 700 million paid subscriptions. These are not subscribers, these are paid subscriptions. What do I mean by that? Apple News is a paid subscription, so they would count it as one. And let's take if I have a subscription with a meditation app, that is also another paid subscription. I believe that's what they are counting it here. So, but this is a massive, massive number. All these people, they have their card on record. It's on their phone, and you can just access it with a tap or just by looking at the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, Apple this is 2020 study. It's the number one brand with a brand value over 300 billion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look at the top four, they are all tech companies. You have
Right.
phones there. Samsung is fifth, which is interesting. So if you look at it, but it's 1/5 of Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, brand alone is not a competitive advantage because so many other, Sony has a brand. Just because Sony has a brand, I'm not going to pay up for Sony's products. I might, but not always.
Well,
PlayStation.
Yeah, different parts of Sony are more well known, like the Spider-Man. That's not really a brand, but yeah, the PlayStation.
Makes sense. But yeah, so brand alone is not a criteria. But the question is, can they charge more for their brand? Can they extract?
They can't.
Yeah, they can't, or
they cannot. They tried it with like a $600 PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
No one really bought it.
Why is that?
They bought the Xboxes instead and the Wii's.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then Microsoft after that tried to overcharge, and everyone went back to PlayStation.
Yeah, so that's a problem. So now the question is, can Apple do that? Now, if you look at the price, what do you see?
It's going up.
Yeah, but again, right, you can't compare an iPhone 10 with iPhone 7. For that matter, if you go back in time, iPhone 12 today, right? I don't have a slide for iPhone. I thought this slide is a cool slide. It might be expensive, but if you look at it based on its performance and the features that it has, you can say like for that it is cheaper. But the point I'm trying to make is Apple can charge more and more for their phones So the point I'm trying to say is like Apple brand can command premium price. It's a differentiated product. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, another important slide here, which is this compares the top mobile handset makers operating profit. Apple captures 66% of profits. Okay. The second closest is Samsung. If let's take the $100 is the overall profit from these 6 players, okay, that is listed over here. Apple captures $66. Samsung captures $19. So that's like 85 gone. So the remaining 4 here, they would have to fight for that $15.
Right.
Now that tells me, again, I'm just tying it back to the brand. Brand alone is not powerful, but the fact that I can charge and I can capture a major share of profit, it tells me that something is working beautifully for me. By the way, Apple generates 32%, I mean, is responsible for 32% of the overall revenue.
Oh, wow.
Sum up all their revenue, and it tells you one other thing. See, all these guys, they are, I mean, not all of them, they have different products and a lot of it for mass market. And if you have to sell, say, 2 billion phones, say in Asia or in developing countries, your price point needs to be very different, right?
Yeah.
A country that, US average GDP will be what, $62,000. $1,000 phone might not be a big deal. But say another company with $3,000 of GDP, paying $1,000 is massive. So, so what you see there is mass market phones. So they'll have a lot of volume share. But when it comes to profit share and pricing power, Apple is pretty phenomenal. Okay. Another important thing. Now, if you look at the market share of mobile operating systems, the top one is Android.
Right.
And the second one is Apple. Rest of them, whatever you see below, they all add up to 1%.
Wait, Windows and Linux, aren't those computer operating systems?
No, they had for mobile as well some time back. I don't even know if they are being sold.
There's a Windows Mobile.
Yeah, they tried long back. I believe so. Think about it for a minute. And one other, again, right, this tells you it's pretty much study. I think, see, I haven't looked at the switching cost data, like what percentage of iPhone users switch to Android and what percentage of Android users switch to iPhone. I think the switching cost and the pain should be equally there on both sides. So I would be surprised if anyone has an advantage here. Maybe you should check the data. I just looked at the share. It appears more or less stable, and I just concluded that, yeah, maybe it's, the
Yeah, I mean,
cost.
it's a linear line. Like if you see a slight dip in like if you look from October 2020 to November 2020, you see a dip in Android, and then you see a small rise in Apple.
Yeah.
So I think, and then if you look where Android increases, Apple decreases. So yeah, it doesn't look like a huge change, really.
Yeah. And one other thing, remember I spoke to you about economies of scale. If you look at the mobile shipments, these are like, if you look at the percentage splits, ignore others. But if you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players here, more or less, like, Samsung has a share of 18%, a market share of 18%. Apple has a share of 15%. When you are going to sell millions and millions of phones, like 300 plus million, somewhere between 300 to 400 million phones should get sold, if not more, I would say. All these players should have economies of scale because they are moving in millions. So here's the lesson. Imagine mobile phone market is a global market, right? So when you have a global market, you are talking about what, 4 to 5 billion customers out there. More than one player can reach or have economies of scale, in the sense they would be able to sell a lot. There should be more players compared to, imagine you are the only retail store in a town with 5,000 people. Okay. Once you captured your customers, another player can't even come in. Right. Because where are they going to get the customers from? If they get those customers, my cost will be so much where I might hurt myself more than hurting the other guy or the person who's already out there. So when a market is massive, more than one player can capture, can have economies of scale. So that's why going back over here, network effects will be there for both Apple and Android, or iOS and Android. So you're not going to find another new player coming in anytime soon. And that's what is reflected in this chart. Okay. Now, brand is huge for Apple, and we already saw that in pricing and in terms of profit share pool and in terms of the survey. We already saw switching cost is pretty massive for both sides. That's my guess. So as long as Apple can continue to do its job really, really well, the way in which they have been doing, and continue to invest in its brand, I think their moat is pretty phenomenal. That's the conclusion that I'm coming to. Questions?
None right now.
Okay. Now we are moving on to the third filter. Remember, we looked at business, we looked at moat, and then we are getting into risks. Okay. Now, what can not even kill this business? What can come and shake this business where something happens and all of a sudden you lose 30% of your profits, or you lose 20% of your sales? What risks do I see?
Yeah. What if someone doesn't want to give Apple a 30% cut for the
That's my first thing, right? Can Apple continue to get 30% cut from App Store sales? And tell me more about Epic Games and Apple. You know more about Epic Games than me.
Yeah, so they had an app on the App Store, which they make a lot of like money from selling things. And they didn't want to get, like, they felt Apple was taking too much with the 30%, right? Because like they have their own store where I think they take less than 30%. And so what they wanted to do was sell like the items on their game would cut by cutting out Apple, and Apple didn't like that. So Epic Games is suing them for like I think a monopoly on the App Store by not allowing like third-party app stores and all. So
no, you're right. I think what Epic Games did, they have something called as V-Bucks. V is in victory.
V-Bucks.
Yeah, so basically you can use V-Bucks for in-app purchases. I mean, I'm playing a game. You play it. I mean, I've never played.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So what Epic Games did was they routed their customers to their website, and they said, hey, you buy V-Bucks from here directly, so you're going to get it at say 20% discount or something. Apple being a walled garden where you would have to pay them. I think Apple's rules are interesting and at times crazy as well. They're very clear. When you're dealing with digital goods, whether it's an app, you charge for app downloads, or you do an in-app purchase, or if it is a subscription, you pay me. You pay me a 30% cut. For subscription, I believe after a year, it goes down to 15% if I remember their rates. And then they don't charge for physical goods. For example, they don't charge Uber because Uber deals with physical goods like moving people, etc. Now, if you're an app, you're not even allowed to upsell within the App Store. That's against Apple's walled garden or against Apple rules. Now, that's why if you look at all the big companies with their own brand, for example, Amazon, I would love to buy an Audible within Audible app, or I would love to buy a book within my Kindle app on iPhone without leaving the app. But I can't because there's no way for me to do that. Because if Amazon did that, they would have to give Apple 30%. And that doesn't make sense because these products are razors. I mean, they have very minimal margins. So what they did, these are big companies with brand names. I go to Amazon.com on the website, I buy, and then they deliver it on my phone instantaneously. So they have been doing that. That's how they have been working around it. See, to me, the problem is much deeper than 30% cut. The problem is this. Apple have their own first-party apps. What do I mean by that? If you go here, whatever I've listed here, these are first-party apps. These are Apple apps. Okay.
Right.
They compete directly with, say, Spotify. For example, say Apple acquired this company called as Beats.
Yeah.
and they rebranded it as Apple Music. Now imagine if Spotify had to give a 30% cut. There's no way they can, Apple will undercut. They'll price their products much lower because there's no 30% fee for Apple on Apple's platform.
Right.
So this
Yeah.
is kind of disadvantaging companies because you're competing with them directly. Right now, and not only that, you are not allowing these companies to upsell within the app in a native way. For example, I was playing around with Spotify. I don't have a Spotify premium account. I said, hey, if I want to do a Spotify premium, how would I do it within an iPhone? I don't think there's a way to do that with an iPhone.
Yeah, I mean, I have here, hold on. Wait, I have the Spotify app. So
Try doing a premium.
yeah. There's a button called premium. So
do they route you or do they allow you to do that? There's a button called as premium. Then what do you do there?
it's not letting me click on anything.
Exactly. So basically you would have to do it outside and then get in.
Right.
Okay. And the conversion rate will be much higher if you just show this instantaneously. In the sense, if you upsell within the flow, the conversion rate, say for example, they can convert a lot more free users into paid users had Apple not taken that much of a cut or had not taken a cut. So this is the case all about where it is anti-competitive, Apple undercutting and all sorts of things. And also the rules are not very clear. Did Apple allow Google Stadia to be listed?
I'm not sure because I don't really follow it. Is it in the App Store?
Yeah, I heard that they did not. Now the rules are very
it's there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
It's
did.
in the App Store.
They did.
Yeah.
So at least the scrutiny they do. And sure, I mean, what's the name of this company? Spotify said that when Apple did their HomePod, where Shopify was not there, so the rules are very stringent. So the rules are opaque, and it's a walled garden. And Apple undercuts by coming up with competitive products. These are all the challenges that are out there. So it's not just a 30% cut. Now, if you look at how much of a damage it can have, say, for example, if the verdict comes that your commission should be much lower, what we are talking about, the overall services revenue of iPhone is $54 billion. Okay. Of that 54 billion, actually Google pays 10.5 billion to be the default search engine on Apple's iPhone. Think about it for a minute. You open Safari, you do Google, you do search, Google is the default search engine. Okay. 15 billion is what they earn from commissions. Okay.
You're right.
And the way in which this number came out, it's not Apple discloses it in their 10K. As a part of this lawsuit, Apple disclosed a few more information. So they paid 45 billion to developers in 2020. So this 15 billion is a 25% cut because of discounts and recurring and whatnot. So if you add together, the overall services revenue is 60 billion. 45 billion went to developers and 15 billion came to Apple. Okay. Now we are talking about this 15 billion. Now, if you translate, apply services margin and translate it, you're talking about 8 billion in operating profit is what is under question. Okay. Which represents 12% of Apple's operating income.
Right.
It's not the end of the world, but it's a reasonable sized number. Okay. Now, to me, what will happen, see, already big companies, they are going off of Apple already. It's not like I can buy Amazon products. For example, books, I cannot do that on Amazon. They're already out. Neither Spotify. So anyways, bigger companies with their brand name, customers won't mind giving their credit card information on their site. Smaller companies, they don't have much choice. They would have to possibly go with Apple. They have to use Apple Pay because that's something that they are providing. So what will end up happening, maybe this might come down a little bit. But remember, when I in my Apple phone, in most of the Apple phones, Apple Pay is already installed. Okay. There's a huge friction for an unknown app. If they ask you to provide credit card information, would you provide it?
No.
No. So Apple will get its cut, whether it's 15%, 30%, we will figure it out. So that value add is going to be there. They'll continue having it. And here's another thing, right? People are talking about, oh, we should do side loading. Side loading is nothing but providing other kinds of stores, not just app stores. We need to have different stores where, let's take Epic wants to have their own stores, maybe have it, or figure out a way to install apps that is outside of App Store.
Yeah, they already have their own store on PC where you
Yeah.
could just download it from the browser and install it.
Yeah, but again, is that going to change the game for Apple a lot? I seriously doubt it. Remember, Google is paying $10.5 billion for no reason. I mean, are they doing it for no reason? They're doing it because of the default. Now, if App Store is the default, how can developers figure out their own ways of loading apps? I mean, what's the route to market? How can I get my apps onto customers or users? So App Store is going to be there as a dominant force, one. And then remember, I think what Apple will do as time moves on is to invest more and more in their own apps. For example, there's something called as Apple All-in Bundle, where I can get TV, I can get news, I can get music, I can get Fitness Plus, and there's one or two more things that you can get. So Apple would be the provider of first-party apps, and it would get its cut directly from there because you're paying to Apple. Because it's like me selling my own goods. I think Apple will continue to do that. And remember, there are 700 million paid subscriptions, and they are all defaulted in. I think there is a risk here, but is this a massive mega risk? I'm not sure. Looking at the data, it doesn't appear to me that way. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the second risk is the geopolitical risk between the US and China and how it can impact Apple. The reason I say what I say somewhere between 70 to 20% of revenue of Apple comes from China, which is one. Okay. Now, Apple's supply chain, Foxconn, he is a contract manufacturer. He assembles most of Apple's products from China. And he employs, from what I know, it's 1 million plus. And Charlie Munger said, right, in one of the talks, so Apple's supply chain is one man with 2 million employees, and the man is not perfect. So this risk has always been there in terms of what geopolitics can do and how it can affect Apple. But again, right, from a China angle, when you have over 1 million people working there, you're going to hurt yourself as well. So it's going to be an interesting phenomenon that's going to play out. And if you look at what's going on with the recent China and what they are doing to tech companies, they're going hard on gaming companies as well, because games are addictive and they don't want kids to spend a lot of time playing games. Guess how much of this 15 billion comes from games? Make a guess.
80%.
You're absolutely right. It's 80%.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, it is 80%. Let me get that 1 second. I was like surprised.
I mean, games sell a lot of like microtransactions.
Oh, here it is. So if you look at billings, it's this is 2016, but again, I think should not be very different. It's 80% games is what they say. And if you look at the major top player there at the top, you have
Tencent.
Yeah. So
yeah, Tencent, Supercell, King. Yeah, the first four I know are like game developers.
Yeah. So now here is Apple making a lot on games, and then Apple cares for your fitness, health, and whatnot. It's interesting. Okay, so that risk is definitely there. And one more thing which I read on Economist, of the top 200 suppliers, 25% of them are in China. So Apple will diversify, hopefully, and what the geopolitical tensions that are between the West and especially US and China and how it's going to affect Apple. That risk cannot be eliminated. The only way to eliminate it is to not eliminate, to minimize it, is to diversify. In the sense, not put everything in Apple, instead diversify it away. Okay. The third one, I think one more that I'll add is, can we have a super app like WeChat in the US and in the developed markets? For example, in China, people get a lot of things done without leaving WeChat. You know about that?
I heard of the app. I thought it was just like WhatsApp or something, or
It
just a
does
text.
everything. You can order your cab to food to, you can do everything is what. I haven't used WeChat, but I've heard my friends talk about it. But unlike China, other parts of the world has not gotten into this super app concept or a single
Yeah,
app
I don't
dominating.
think that could happen here because that would just lead to a monopoly. And aren't there like regulations against that?
Sure, but yeah. But again, right, that's one. Also, the behavior of users over here matters a lot. China leapfrogged so many things and Tencent kind of consolidated a bunch. Not sure if it's going to happen, but if it happens, it'll be interesting because now that super app can sell you subscriptions directly. Now, Apple
Yeah,
won't allow it today because you cannot do that. Everything, it's a walled garden for a reason. Now, I haven't listed it here, but that is something to keep in mind. And the last one, which is what comes after smartphone. See, in tech, things change every 10 to 15 years, something new comes up. We had mainframes in the 70s, then we had PCs, then the whole idea of internet came, search, social,
mhm,
and mobile. So I mean, mobile, social, and then social, mobile, and then we had the whole cloud. Okay. Now, especially when it comes to personal computing, what comes after smartphones? I do not know, right? And it's very easy to say, like, look, what innovation can be there beyond phones, and one can say like anything that's going to happen, it's going to happen on top of phones. They are all reasonable arguments, but one thing to keep in mind is, especially when it comes to tech, one has to keep an eye out for what's the next big thing, and can Apple adopt to that, and
right.
that would be the most important thing as far as Apple is concerned.
Hmm.
So one example which is not on tech but I thought was very interesting is, so Charlie Munger, he had a friend whose father used to own a company. I mean, used to own a company that supplies tongue nut oil, TUNGNUT. So these are tongue nuts and these are tongue nut trees. So this guy had a lot of tongue nut trees, and the specialty with tongue nut oil is, if you add it to paints, those paints can resist water, in the sense you can coat it in a way where your water cannot damage the paint and the surface. So that property was cool, and the US Marine, they said that every paint that's going to be on our ships should have, say, X% of it, X% of tongue nut oil should be there. So this company did really well for a long time until two things happened. Some advances in chemistry that made someone to create an artificial additive, and tongue nut oil was no longer needed. And then for whatever reason, all the trees that this guy had got destroyed. Even that destruction did not happen. When there is an additive that can do a better job, then your product loses its market. So to me, that example was vivid, and that's something to keep in mind. What comes after smartphones? People say it's going to be glass, or it could be, it's some kind of a set that once again, that's going to do AR and VR. Uh, possible.
Hmm.
I do not know, but that's something to keep in mind 100%. Make sense?
Yeah.
Last part, which is on the valuation. So I've kept it simple. Free cash flow, that is cash flow that Apple generates after investing in the business, is 75 billion. Okay. Its current
Hmm.
market cap is 2.5 trillion. So we are getting a yield of, if you put 75 at the top, for what I'm buying, I'm getting close to 3% or 2.5% yield, 2.9% yield. Now, I said if Apple can continue growing at 5%, it's top line, assuming that wearables and services will grow at 15% over the next 5 years. See, wearables and services, they represent 30% of sales.
Hmm.
If they grow at 15%, the overall pie will grow at 5%.
Right.
Makes sense. If 30% grows at 15%, the pie grows at 5. I'm saying one has to get somewhere between 7 to 8%. And the biggest assumption over here is Apple is going to sell, say, close to 180 to 200 million phones, and it can continue to hold its dominant position, and its margins do not shrink, and investors are willing to pay the same multiple that they are paying right now. So all these are huge assumptions. Under these assumptions, I think they would make somewhere between 7 to 8% is my guess based off of this. Just ballpark, simple math. Any questions here?
No.
Yeah, the idea, I mean, what it says is if I buy Apple and hold it for the next 5 years, I should earn somewhere between 7 to 8% compounded.
Right.
Assuming all else plays as I listed down here.
Mm-hmm.
With that, we are pretty much done. There's one other thing, right? People talk a lot about management. It's an important thing to look at how good is management, how able they are. I did not put that as a separate filter. The reason for that is very simple. It's very easy to fall for narrative fallacy. You might be like, oh, this CEO is awesome, etc., etc., where you might miss out on the important facts. That's the reason why I never spoke about management as a separate filter. But that's an important thing to evaluate while you are looking at a business through these 4 lenses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And these 3 books, they would, I mean, of course, you looked at business model generation, and then also look at understanding Michael Porter and the 7 powers to understand the durable competitive advantage and where they come from and why they are important. So with that, we are done with this whole finance and investing series. Now, what I want you to do is develop the habit of just, if you look at, I mean, say you are watching Netflix, just download their 10K, just read, just look at some key metrics and then map it back to this framework of business risks, business mode risks and valuation. Just make this a habit. Over a period of time, you would have looked at a lot of business and you would have learned a ton. Remember, by studying business, you will actually understand how the world works. Because end of the day, we are all either working for a business or we are running our own business. So you can't escape that fact.
Right.
All right. Anything else, Vibhu?
No, I just want to say thank you for all the presentations. I really learned a lot, like not just about business, also about Apple. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.